sometimes, like for instance, I had a woman come in who had a problem with one side of her face. She had had something called Bell's palsy. And Bell's palsy is when the muscles on one side of your face go completely limp and you can't move them. And Bell's palsy is something that if you don't do anything, it will usually go away in a month. If you see a chiropractor, it'll go away in a few days to a week. But either way, it usually goes away. In her situation, it went away, but it left a strange residual problem. That entire affected half of her face was very sensitive to any kind of a wind or breeze, and it hurt her. So she came all the way across the country to have a healing session to get that sensitivity and that pain gone from her face. And she had 2 sessions with me, and it stayed. So she was going to leave, and when she was leaving, she said to me, but there was something else unusual, that she had a high fever and an infection in her ear when she was a young girl. And at that point in time, she was in her 40s. But she had this fever and infection when she was very young. And she lost the hearing in one ear. Now, she was used to the not hearing in that one ear. It wasn't the reason she thought she came in. She didn't tell me about it, but her hearing returned. So could you say she didn't have the healing that she wanted? Yes, but you can't say she didn't have a healing because she had another one. I believe that these healings happen in strange and unusual ways because it attracts us. It becomes more exciting and we're more compelled to experience these reconnective healing frequencies. And I don't believe that healing is limited to the physical. I think that what these healing frequencies are actually doing, and I know we don't have time to get into why I think this way in enough detail in this interview, but I believe that what these frequencies are actually doing is restructuring, actually altering our DNA, or as some people say, reconnecting strands of our DNA.
I wanted to come to this point right now. Actually, it is known that genetic code can be changed. DNA consists of genes to some extent. We are able to influence the impression of genes. This is a medically and scientifically proven fact, and it was scientifically demonstrated. How is this possible for you to do this if there is no technique?
I don't know. And I'm being honest, I don't know exactly how this happens. What we work is we gently bring our hands into a space near the patient, near the client. It could be, I don't know, it could be 4, 8, 12, or 30 or 40 or 50 centimeters away. And what happens is we begin to feel a sensation. We begin to feel it in our hands, and usually the person on the table then begins to feel it in his or her body. We will also witness then that the person on the table begins to exhibit involuntary movements. The muscles of their face may begin to twitch oddly. Their fingers and their toes may begin large movements, so large that it's very clear and obvious to anyone in the room, and yet half the time the person on the table is not aware of it, and the other half of the time they're lying there going, I don't know why my leg is moving, I'm not moving it. But we know that something is happening, and we also know that when we're in this state, we start to become very, very aware of what the patients describe as not being awake and not being asleep, yet being somewhere even more real.
In outer state of consciousness maybe, or something else?
Well, you could call it an altered state of consciousness except for the baggage that that term carries. It's an expanded state of consciousness, which, yes, is altered, but not altered by drugs and not altered to see something artificial. Actually expanded. It seems as if we are interacting on a more fifth-dimensional, a more multi-dimensional level. Let's look at that. Here, some of the researchers put forth this theory. So let's look at this analogy. Think about our computers. We all, most of us have a computer at home, and we know that when we turn on our computers, We can access the information that's already in the computer, and we can also access the Internet, which is out there somewhere. Now, if we upgrade the software in our computer, we have more information in the computer that we can access, and we have more information that we're able to access on the Internet more rapidly, more clearly, more of it. Now, what if we look at our brains as being our hardware and our DNA as being our software? As we use our brains right now, I know we used to be taught that, everything we've learned and all of our memories and our experiences are stored in our brains. Science today says that's not true. What happens is we store certain things in our brains, just like our computer does, and we access information from outside of ourselves, just like our computer does, because everything is vibration, resonance, energy, and information. And so what happens is that we have access to both. When our DNA begins to expand, when we begin to, shall we say, restructure our DNA or maybe reconnect strands to it, we then have upped the software level in our bodies, which allows us to then access more of not only what's in our brains, but what's out in the universe. And this seems to be a step towards how we are becoming more clearly multidimensional beings. A lot of talk has been going on lately about we're getting closer and closer to the year 2012. And if you look at the Mayan calendars and the predictions in the calendars of the Incas and the Hopis and Nostradamus' predictions and other people's, they talk about, they all seem to stop being able to read what might be going on beyond the year 2012. And people who are lost in concepts of doomsday and whatever like to say, 2012 will be the end of the world. And it won't be the end of the world as we know it today, because we're becoming more fifth-dimensional beings. And as we move into this more expanded dimensional existence, it's hard for us, while we're still four-dimensional, to be able to completely understand it, to be able to see it and read it. So the calendars tend to stop because we don't know what's there.
Can you just tell us a few more words about the DNA strands? At some point in your book you are mentioning that originally we did have 12, if I am not mistaken, which have been actually lost in time.
Right.
What's happening in there? How would you explain that?
To the best as I understand this, and I do pretty much believe this to be true. See, you want me to go in and into a concept that originally, let's just say, the Earth, we may have existed here on the Earth in a simultaneous plane of existence. Some people would like to refer to us during that time frame as being Pleiadians, from Pleiadian.
Yes.
I don't know that that's necessarily the case. The concept is that we may have once existed in this format, and as we did so, we had 12 strands of DNA originally. Apparently, there became a little bit of a problem or a rift, and we split into two groups of people, and the scientists or the researchers in one group discovered a way to disconnect 10 of our 12 strands of DNA. Those of us who are here on the planet today are here to bring back or reconnect us to our original fullness as human beings. Now, the problem with telling this story so short like this on the radio is that I don't really have the time to give it the context that's needed so it sounds just a little bit more sane. And anyone listening to this can go, well, that guy sounds nuts. And when I listen to this story, I think I sound a little nuts too. Now, I'm not saying that I'm not, but I am saying that if we do a second interview at another point in time, if you'll allow me to go into this story, I can make it seem, and I can make it a whole lot more feasible sounding than it is right this moment.
I'm just thinking about, that's contrary to evolution. I mean, we should gain something through evolution, not lose. So this is just my thought.
We didn't lose through